This piece of artwork, which is many pieces of artwork, is Elizabeth's project is to document the haunted house that her family lived in and her family's relationship to the ghosts that may or may not be there. And she also happens to have an aunt and uncle who are paranormal investigators, which is like the coolest job that anyone can ever have. So I don't have paranormal investigator family members, but my family is paranormal, as are all of our families. And as we all know, all houses are haunted. So I'm going to read two poems about ghosts. The first envisions the ghost in Elizabeth's project, and it's called Self-Portrait as Ghost. A house is burning. It isn't a white Federalist or even one with shutters. Someone's memories are in there, tied to the furniture, pressed for years between the pages of an album. Her mind is turning in my hands. In my room at the top of the stairs, I'm trapped like the ocean in a shell's ear, feeding my dark fuel to the air. It takes everything I have to knock on a closed door. No one answers. I shake the bed. I become static, ecstatic, foreseeable, disagreeable. Nothing more than a window for the wind to pass through. I scare no one. Even the dead disremember me. Night after night, green, sick, and starry-eyed, I light the match. I can't make light of it. It burns everything I wanted my life to mean. And the second poem is about a sort of ghost skeptic, a famous ghost skeptic, Harry Houdini, who tried much of his life to disavow the sort of existence of the spirit world and expose people who claimed that ghosts were real and kind of put on ectoplasmic shows. And there's some ectoplasm in these photographs, actually. And one of the things Houdini did was when he died, he had an agreement with his wife that he would send her a message from the other side if there was another side. And so every year there was a seance in which his wife tried to kind of raise the spirit of Houdini, and as far as we know, never was successful. So this poem is about that. And thank you again for having us here tonight, and thank you for coming out and hearing poetry. Rosabelle Believe. Rosabelle Believe was the phrase Houdini and his wife agreed in secret he'd repeat at the seance after his death, if there was life, and he could say so. No one knows if Houdini said bull's heart, black zebra, or Radiator Charlie's mortgage lifter when she asked across the dinner table what variety of tomato he would prefer. Or if they spoke to the other divides of marriage, the shut mouth and the closed door of sleep behind which they tucked each other, accepting the long calm like Edward Hopper, who painted a woman, always his wife, in a silk slip reclining on a bed, or standing next to an open window in the corner of an empty room. White as a bird's eye, she sings all night by that window, pollinating day. No matter what we say to ourselves in secret, the light that radiates from that page and from this one is nothing less than what it means to love the shared silence between us and the empty room waiting for us here. Thank you.
Being Armenian. Mostly, you feel popular in your suffering. Everyone wants to claim you, Greeks, Jews, Palestinians, but at other times, the distaste emanates from a place not on any map. During a filling, my back molar sharp with heat, I asked for more Novocaine. The dentist sighed, shook his head, and muttered, "Oh, you Armenians." Upon meeting my ex's mother, she said, "I know all about you Armenians. I watch the Kardashians every week." Armenian hair. I feel pity, not for the black tree trunks that stand straight from my eyebrows, but the baby wispy hairs that grow without direction or guidance. They need outside help, so I pluck and wax and date men who ask me to get a Brazilian. They love ethnic girls, they plead, but they still offer to pay for it, and one takes an hour and a half. The esthetician sweats and curses, asks me if I'm Lebanese or Russian. "Oh, Armenian," she exclaims, "you should have told me." When she finishes, my skin burns red, speckled with blood, a chicken freshly plucked. No sex for 24 hours. Actually, for you, let's make it 48. She knows that Armenian hair takes over, spreading over fences, over neighbors' yards, cities' rose gardens, and beyond, claiming the only land they have left. When a Turk is in the hostel kitchen. When a Turk is in the hostel kitchen and you're holding a knife, you consider pressing the serrated edge against his cleanly shaven throat. If you did, could you claim insanity? Your Armenian grandmothers, great uncles inhabiting your brain. He offers you Turkish coffee. 2 lesbians roast chicken, and you still haven't found anyone to join you in the hot tub. And the desk clerk says that the pool rules forbid soaking alone. Drowning is more common than you think, she says. The lesbians say no. The Turk asks, what is a hot tub? Minutes later, steam floats over the Pacific. He is next to you, the ocean home to neither of you. He asks if you speak any languages. You say Armenian, and he says, wait, you're Armenian? You're okay with Turks? You laugh, and you don't mention you almost slit his throat. And the lights flicker, and he offers his towel. Yours fell in the tub. At the gravel driveway, he takes off his running shoes. He tells you to wear them to protect your feet. And my last one. My uncle offers me a cow. It's Christmas Eve in New Jersey, and my uncle pulls me close to the grand piano. He doesn't ask about San Francisco or why I left my job. He just says, but when? When are you going to become a bride? I pick off the fuzz from my sweater, wish my glass held more whiskey. He looks at me, grips my elbow, and says, if you were in Armenia, they would take you and all the single men and women, and I think he will say, shoot us, because the genocide stories start the same way. They gathered the men, they lined them up, and they shot them, or they took the children and brought them into the woods, and so on. But no, I will not be shot. You'll stand in a circle, alternating men and women, and then you take the hand of the man next to you, and he is your husband. Then each couple is given a cow. I snicker. You need a cow to start a family. You have until August. Why August? Why not? And how can I argue with a man riddled with tumors, a man who has just 8 months to live? But instead I mention that a studio apartment with a cow might be difficult, and he shakes his head and says, you're missing the point. Thank you.
Good evening. The first poem is called Still Life, 1945. War. The man face down in the snow is my father. Chest, legs, body as if asleep in snow. He hears the silent woods, the slight shiver of ice forming on branches, the cry of a crow, crunch of boots, artillery fire, moans. Ally planes overhead, crush of metal, shouts. He imagines his mother lies down beside him, smooths his hair. The trees turn over and sigh. Sleepers or lovers, arms twined around one another for comfort. Something in the world must love him, must want him alive. His hands, the soles of his feet, the veins in his neck, the roots of his hair. He wants to live, so he feigns death. For 3 days, unmoving in the snow, his bones brittle as hatred, so cold he could break. And this is hunger, also my father. Some days at the table, my father's hand is slow to bring bread to his mouth. He is inside the telling of his story, his body far away, hidden under a mattress, jumping off a train into snow, hiding potatoes in his pockets. We dug a trench, then we filled it up every day, marching there and back until it was dark. We ate cold soup, not soup, water, nothing. The fork pushes food around the plate while my father swallows the hard words, the eggs cooling, the tea tepid, milk pooling at the bottom of the cup. And the next one, this is called Family Life. My father brings home a dog who guards me in my cradle, growling at my mother when she steps close. My aunt is in the house baking. She sets a broken pan under the stove. My mother has gone off to work, and I don't know who she is, mistaking my father's sister for the one who loves me best. I cry and cry until the doctor says to my mother, "You don't have enough milk." My mother looks down at her breasts, small as apples. It's too soon after the war, and they want so much right away. Everything they own is in my body.
For inspiration, I downloaded the teacher guide for this exhibit, and with questions like, what memories have you inherited? What's the difference between the past and history and memory? And I worked with those this morning. And so this is what I came up with. It's called 13 Ways of Looking at a Teacher Resource. And I just met Tarita, who is an educator and a poet, and I recruited her to help me do this reading. So be careful, I might bring one of you into this with me, but thank you.
What types of memories have you inherited?
Stories live in me like sharp lightning flashes across the southern desert.
How have they been passed down to you?
She said, on the train they packed us like sardines, or we drove our own cars to the camps, or I wore a button during the war saying, I am Korean for protection. Then nothing. Then the great seas of silence, death quiet and dark, which swallowed all of us. Then the cans in the backyard crushed and unrecognizable, and wind in a box, and light in a box, and azaleas.
What helps you remember them?
If you get your face quiet enough, what counts as your father's shadow will speak through it.
How have they impacted you, your life?
Unknown.
Do you think they've changed over time?
Unknown.
Do any of these inherited memories relate to historical events?
I tell my students there is no part of you that goes untouched by the angel of history, wings pinned to the air by the storm of progress.
What memories of your own have you chosen to share with others?
The light sings itself awake. I am awake at the turn of the 21st century and alive to the turning. Did I ask too large? I am, as always, afflicted with desire, and the girlhood wish to lay my body down in the wet summer grass, lit and unlit by the flicker of the setting light. Though shapes and faces sail down through the bloodlines, though the ghosts grow their nails into me, I remain a romantic. For years, I turned the fire inward and against my skin, bleeding to prove how much I wanted to be here and break historical silence and belong in ways undreamt by them to this world.
What are the differences between memory and history?
One gives birth to fire, one gives birth to stones.
Do you think history is fixed or objective?
No.
What is the relationship between the past and the present?
Yes.
How do we make meaning from the past?
Yes.
How do you make meaning of the past?
See the rider again at the gate of memory? The land cracks open with winds and shots of rain. She should drown her pages in the sky, take to the ground like a dogged gardener, turn the soil into something new, survive the past. Whispers at the barbed wire no longer suffice. What works is singing from the cave of the self, where memories of knives and clouds shaped like tiger faces live together like children, unaware of their potential.
Do you think we have the responsibility to the memories we inherit?
Even the dead, wrote Walter Benjamin, will not be safe from the enemy if he wins. Thank you. Thank you, Serena.
I am your wild, your lash and your sword, runaway orbit, your transom in the night, stop, clock, and gird, manifest ache. I've got the teeth, I'm your top, your spin, your early spring, lover of the world's small welts and the hornworm. I will only live on weatherward shore. Tremble and sway, guy wire, ruby-hued stalk, your shroud and your stay. City cured by fire, dark between stars, sash, exhale, and splash, I spill. I am yard to the barn, mane to your horse, behold my face, I'm torn awake, I take my fill. When no one else will, I'll shoot the dog. Self-portrait as Santa Anna, the general, the saint, the winds, and the crypto Jew. Something under the rug has been swept. The wedding shot, the gun, the thief set out to catch another, but why? My spine sends shivers down, and skin, however saved, will not be bone. So spring the chicken and sit the duck down, O mother of the mother who cowed the sacred sound and safe, you who see red eye to eye, the elephant in the light, your piece say, out, out, undamned, daylight scare, but sometimes there is no time, there is no spot. The devil's wind is scattered to the fore, and from my eyes fall all the scales. One thing is saying, another doing. That moment in Saigon, old same, old same. The earth is saved by salt and by a bell. So I was not meant to live on the shelf, and the blood will sweat, but say it ain't. The corrected self, a rattling saber, a sacred something, be apple sweetness, and tell me the story of your name. The soul speaks to the body being hurricane, barrier, and gate. Gale and gust, Must you insist again? By just such truths, storms break booms, slam, retreat, brought by water, returned by water. Stone walls dare landfall, surge, wreckage. Blue hour bears down now. Switches, power lines, lashed, submerged in salt. Will it do then to dry them or out, or better yet, tunnel deeper? Restore the power, restore the sun, unrip the roof. Run, trains again, run. I make no mistake. Your crooked course aims straight for me. I am harbor, sea gate under siege. Raise me the waters, batter me, I am path.
I am adopted, carrier of all stories and owner of none. At my birth, there were no storks, just an armada of perch and sunfish guiding me naked, unmoored down river on driftwood. The name of that river, flush with butterfat, free-range babies astride floating trunks like a colony of frogs, was never said, just this: how I came to be in your family, without love's drunken regret or naked teenage impropriety, but rather a fishing trip where the big one was me, as huge a surprise as a tsunami. Imagine Play-Doh, a glitter in Vegas, or touring the Chitlin circuit as a stand-up. This is how my truth was revealed, couched in a drunken comics aside. I am the conjured one, and my life's story is his big closer. Think it's easy making this shit up? Imagine inventing a real life. You are a reflection of every previous face and posture. You are a reflection of every memory recalled, every shot of generational juice exchanged. I am the dust on your mirror. I am the crumpled receipt in the bottom of your purse. I am adopted, from the Latin word meaning to pencil in, to opt for. I am carrier of the virus of story. Along the fault lines crackling my heart are inherited memories like viral jingles for products they no longer make. You are my cousin, my brother, my niece. We've never met. I apologize that every time I see you, I must renew my vows. Yet, I hold the stories your ancestors are too busy with death to explain. If you can put your phone away long enough, I can recite their ungoogleable stories. Stories you'll soon learn the hard way. I knew your grandparents and I ushered their funerals. I collected empty bourbon bottles during their bid whist games. I remember them planting the fruit trees, crowning your yard. I can remember your Aunt Effie saying, you can hollow out the people, but they still carry the seed. Blood knows the melody, and ancient songs will play through the pinch rollers of your children's bones and habits. I am keeper of stories falling under the table. I am carrier of the virus of memory. I am adopted. Too often, my dreams are full of strangers and my pockets full of someone else's keys. My burden is to know everything and be asked nothing. I rely on the comfort of the question rather than the grief or shame of the answer. Like, what future did my father envision in the spilled carbureted blood of a stubborn outboard motor? What did my birth mother intend entrusting me to the shifting whims of the river? What did the reflecting scales of the river play to my father when he fished out my infant body shivering and miraculous? What verses did the fresh follicles of my hair recite through my new mother's fingertips, squeezing swamp water from my spongy afro? I am adopted. I was born anyway. a kind of bastard with a license. I will have to be penciled in at the corners. My mugshot will have to be footnoted in your family albums. I will be recalled like a ghost haunting the smallest real estate of your unused rooms. I will be fed everything you can't stomach. My mask is made to resemble your father, who taught me how to build a house of bottles and fish bones, but not how to keep it warm if I'm the only one in it. All right, thank you.
There's so many great pieces in this show, and I saw this piece, which immediately jumped out at me for a bunch of reasons. One is that it's apocalyptic qualities seem relevant. It's a kind of, well, you can see the brochure that Ellen Harvey made there and get some more information about it. But basically, another reason why it jumped out at me is because it's called, as you can see, Alien's Guide to the Ruins of Washington, D.C. I grew up in Washington, D.C. That's where I'm from. And immediately this structure made sense to me because all over D.C. there are these kind of stands where they sell hot dogs or souvenirs or whatever. And this was a kind of funny like parody of this. It's this sort of imagines that DC and the Earth has been is no longer inhabited by human beings, which doesn't sound as crazy now as it might have when she first made this piece, and that this is like an alien speculative guide to what they, like what they imagine our lives were like and everything, and the ancillary material is really great, and so I was drawn to it for that reason. Then I realized that this is Ellen Harvey, is the sister of a really good friend of mine, the poet Mattia Harvey. So then I really had to ask if I could read in front of this piece. So I'm going to read a couple of poems, and it was sort of, it turns out when I was looking through, I was trying to look for things that take place or mention DC, and this poem is, it mentions the cherry trees, the cherry blossoms in DC, which I'm sure many of you are familiar with. It's called Global Warming, which is a terrible title for a poem, but so be it. Global Warming. In old black and white documentaries, sometimes you can see the young at a concert or demonstration staring in a certain way as if a giant golden banjo is somewhere sparkling just too far off to hear. They really didn't know there was a camera. Cross-legged on the lawn, they're patiently listening to speeches or the folk singer hunched over his little brown guitar. They look as tired as the young today. The calm manner in which their eyes, just like the camera, rest on certain things, then move to others, shows they know no amount of sunlight will keep them from suddenly growing older. I have seen the new $5 bills with their huge pink hypertrophied numbers in the lower right-hand corner and feel excited and betrayed. Which things should never change? The famous cherry trees I grew up under drop all their brand new buds a little earlier each year. Now it's all over before the festival begins. The young, maybe they'll let us be in their dreams. This is a more recent poem. I wrote it after the election. I live over near Lake Merritt, and there was a demonstration right after the election that was really beautiful, and everybody held hands around the lake. It was Hands Around the Lake, it was called. And then a few weeks later, after the Ghost Ship fire, there was another big gathering at night where people came and they brought flashlights and just held them. So that's the context of this poem. It's just called December. At first, we all went down to the lake to hold hands. All the multicolored signs said, "With love, we will resist." Over my head, I lifted my son so he could see what people look like when they hear the song Imagine. A few weeks later, again people stood at the water, this time at night, holding flashlights, to say to fire, "You came without permission and took our young, gentle soldiers for art. So we will show, even with our old technology, we can see each other without you." Others booed the mayor, which was, my friend said, understandable. I don't know what is anymore. Everyone understands in a different, contradictory way the so far purely abstract catastrophe so many millions of choices brought us. Not too far from the water, I sat on the couch below the sound of blades, drinking amber numbing fluid, my thoughts chopping the air, feeling not what is the word to be a father equipped. Mine never told me where to hide a brick of gold. For a long time, I have known no voices will come at last to tell us how to stop pretending we don't know. If it is not safe for some, it is not for anyone. And then the last thing I'm going to read is, I was going through this, like, as I said, I was going through stuff, like, and I came across this sheet of paper, and it's a poem I wrote when I was down in Palm Springs. I used to teach down there. It's a very bizarre place if anyone's been there. And I was looking at this poem, and I was like, oh, maybe there's something there. And then I remembered that, of course, that's where our great president is going tomorrow after he leaves D.C. They're flying straight to Palm Springs. That's where they're going to be. And I looked at the poem, and I was like, oh, this is actually like kind of about them being there. I just had to change a few words, as you can see. So anyway, I'm just gonna read it. It's very short. It's called Palm Springs. I used to live where no one should. Now my head is a blue pool. I adore my opprobrium. There is no one in the horse. The people have abandoned all salutary acts. They're eating music. No one should live so close to mountains. Okay, thanks.
I'll read the poem titled A Lyric Song. There's something is the maple spirit, the goldenness and sincerity of consolation, as is the past piano concerto of his life, swaying slightly and sighing. The doctor with the gray hair softly gives a little smile about the dark, blood-clotted wound. The pale gray sky resembles my mother's voice over the cane. The cane fell asleep on its one foot. I am the cane that lands on the maple, or the note in which Beethoven suddenly feels pity, or nothing, just a bag all covered with the cuts and bruises.
Indigenous daughter, Ferhante Wichinchala, Cedar Girl. Indigenous daughter, anyone othered knows the urgency of wanting to right injustice, sometimes through words or a fist clenched like a baby unborn, sometimes through deadening silence. At times I ache to write about something other than privilege and oppression, white and black, yellow and red, the medicine wheel of writing what cannot be unwritten. Indigenous daughter, the Dene grandmother read love letters masked as poems to her family and an audience of academics. I marveled at her craft of care. She dedicated a poem to her teenage grandson about his babyhood. I watched, wondering if he'd squirm at that age of almost independence, but instead, he soaked in the warmth of her words. Indigenous daughter, I tried to follow the elders' example, write this poem as a love letter, lullaby, devoid of impending danger. But then I thought back to the day we learned you were a girl. That moment, I felt myself mourn for you, born into this world, straddling statistics, your race, erasure, your gender, engendering my caution. Indigenous daughter, no more than a month after your birth, the threat of yet another pipeline traversing treaty lands, scar of black snake, where human error would poison sacred water. Indigenous peoples protecting ancestors, big oil unearthed for profit. Despite dog attacks, greed orchestrated, relative against relative, indigenous people peacefully persevere. Yet the media portrays them as the threat or not at all, racial erasure. I try to follow the elders' example, write about the way you sleep, curled around my shoulder. We nurse warm belly to belly. Your father and I met in the features of your face. But even your name on our lips was once grounds for punishment, is, in some circles to this day, still grounds for punishment. Indigenous daughter, your namesake, medicine so powerful she grew a cedar tree in a single day, yet left by her husband, French fur trapper, when he caught a much younger woman, fathered more children, acquired more land. Indigenous women exploited, once a common occurrence, is still, in some circles to this day, common. Every mother worries for her child's safety, but I think the mother of an Indigenous daughter worries all the more. And now, when I think back to that Dene grandmother and her teenage grandson, I recognize that age of always interdependence and the way, in the always impending danger, a poem that holds sacred the Indigenous land, the Indigenous daughter, launches its own fury of fists. I'll read one more. Indigenous Peoples Day 2016. I won't say your name because today isn't about you anymore. For many of us, it never was. Today is about honoring every Indigenous baby, breath, beat, seeds of survival. It's about acknowledging that sacred places have sacred names and learning and using those names. Today is about remembering relatives who fought to protect life and ways of life. Today is about Peltier and all prisoners punished for tactics of survival, cultural revival. It's about praying for the strength to make sacrifices, to live as a good ancestor. Today is about giving, so the 7th generation, the 17th generation can thrive. Thank you.